perhaps to a different form of poetry. And there are even times when people experience writer's block, and a poetry prompt will help generate that motor again and move you in the right direction. So it's something that we use every month as part of our poetry process in our writing. So we're going to be presenting two groups of poems today. The first group is based on prompts that were given out in our class over the past year or so. And the members of the group were invited to choose one of those prompts that they felt had been particularly meaningful for them and that resulted in a poem that they particularly liked and that they thought was successful. And they were also asked to choose some kind of visual element that tied in with the subject matter. So today we're going to start with Jeannie Abbey.
Thank you, Martha. Dave and I moved here to Friends 1 year ago yesterday. Martha was one of the first people I met. We shared an elevator that first day. And she asked me about my interests. Well, when I mentioned writing, she told me about the poetry writing group which she leads. I had belonged to a writing club for the past 10 years, but they had recently dismantled and I missed it terribly. So I was immediately captivated by Martha's invitation to try her group. She stopped later that day, the same day, giving me information on the next meeting. My first evening at Friends, I'd already belonged. I felt I had come home. This group is amazing. They encourage each other's efforts. They empathize with each other's written sorrows and joys. It's a place to hone skills and to make new friends. It's our small, intimate community within the larger one. Free verse, that's what this group is all about. That was a new kind of poetry to me. It is, though, indeed free. It lives up to its name. There are no rules in free verse. The only limitation is our imagination. Well, that intrigued me. I wrote this last June. It was my first in a series about adjusting to this new way of living within a community. I titled the group Our Nest in the Treetops because of our 6th floor view of sky and treetops, an unexpected touch of God's nature, blessing us with beauty right outside our wall of windows. This poem, Reflections, is a poem of light verse. It is a humorous poem, although it has a little bit of deeper meaning that lies just under the surface. When I pulled it out for this presentation, I realized I've grown in my writing of free verse since I began last year. I'm a wordy person, but poetry, means less is more. So compression is a challenge to me. This poem needed to be reworked, compressed into a shorter poem. So I turned to Martha, my gem of a mentor, as well as a good friend. Once again, like always, she gently taught me with ideas, suggestions, and lots of positive feedback. This is the result. Reflections. I committed a crime today, painted over my gold-leafed frame. Ethan Allen would smack my hand for defacing his gilded mirror. Long ago, 'twas a gift, treasured and hung with pride over my walnut studio piano, lullabied to sleep on its ivory wall. It no longer had a home when I gave my instrument away. My early American decor of 60 years then seemed passé. I turned instead, in newness of spirit, to zebra chairs and leather, abstract paintings and ink blot rugs. A more modern look emerged. The mirror mirror sunk down in a dark closet, huddled, lonely and bereft. Its downtrodden pout like a forgotten child in a game of hide and seek. Impatient with its imprudence, I asked the savvy grandchild what to do with my mismatched piece that sulked and would not leave. Change its look, repurpose it to work for you. With heavy heart, I searched on Amazon for a tube of suggested wax and buff to create a pewter sheen. I rubbed and polished until it shone, then nestled it under one long arch of a glittering crystal four-armed floor lamp. My mirror no longer hides in shame, but lifts its gaze in joyful abandonment, reflecting herons from a wall of rain-washed blue. Thank you. Now Barbara Engel will come up to the podium to read her poem on light verse.
A little bit of a commentary on my poem entitled Rocks. Corundum is a crystalline form of aluminum oxide, which is clear when pure. Impurities formed by traces of other minerals make the color of the gem. Corundum's two main gem varieties are rubies or red sapphires and blue sapphires. The mineral that creates the red color in rubies is chromium, while the blue color in sapphires is caused by the presence of iron, titanium, or nickel. When speaking about gems, the term carat, C-A-R-A-T, refers to the unit of measurement for the physical weight of the gem. For example, the ruby weighed 58 carats. The prompt for my first poem was to write a poem that included the key words glisten, visit, and exquisite. Keep your eyes and ears open to locate those words contained within the poem. Rocks. The rockhound blood is in my being. This desire and zeal stokes my spirit, creating a focus that's fixed upon hunting rocks, especially those that grandly sparkle and glisten. However, most gemstones, when discovered in rough form, are often disguised. Wise to know what you're looking for. Ever heard the expression, he's a diamond in the rough? A visit to a gem and mineral show is a bit like going to a casino. After viewing an exquisitely cut and faceted emerald or ruby, it's easy to catch the fever. Sluicing at the mines is addictive. Just one more $20 bucketful. Wise to know what you're looking for. That was a 58-carat ruby you just missed. All right, I'd like to introduce Guilford's Carol Treadway with the next poem.
The Banjo Lesson is a painting by Henry Osawa Tanner, who was born in 1859 and died in 1891. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was trained in the French Impressionistic style, and was active during most of his career in France, where he moved because he felt that discrimination in the United States was interfering with his career. Most of his paintings are of a religious nature, but he also wrote did paintings in a more genre style, like this one. This is an example of an ekphrastic poem inspired by a piece of art. The Banjo Lesson. A gray bearded man bent with age sits, legs spread wide, to hold a young boy who leans trustingly against him. He holds a banjo much too big for him. The old man, perhaps his grandfather, helps him place his fingers on the strings. I see the bond of love between them, the old man's patience, the boy's intensity, his desire to make music, just like the old man's.
I get the privilege of reading two poems for you today. The first one is actually on behalf of our longtime member, Joe Gately, who's sitting here in the front row. If you have had any conversations with Joe since she moved here, you are well aware that she comes from England, and a lot of her poetry has always reflected her background there, especially as a child and young woman, and this is one of those examples. And the artwork that she chose for this represents the beautiful English countryside. And this is called Ecological Survey. The badger's set clings to the quarry, keeping its family safe. The rabbits bound from their burrows, landing on bluebells, bracken, bramble, dock, willow herb, nettles, cow parsley, dandelion, foxglove, herb robert, and hogweed. The blackbird seeks out the sycamores for its home, while the little ones, the chiffchaff, the great tit, and the nuthatch, seek and find holly, rowan, and the poisonous yew. The robin and the tiny wren search for shelter in bushes like blackthorn and the foreign rhododendron. Walking through the sycamore grove, the wood pigeon coos, a soothing background noise. 80 years ago, my neighbor, Mr. War, would offer me sweet chestnuts on the bus we took to town. Mary's getting things settled technologically. This poem is actually one that some of you might recognize because I was very lucky to have it accepted for publication in O. Henry magazine for its past January issue. It was written though for class, and the prompt that it was written for was compression, which Jeannie Abbey alluded to in the beginning. And we call that the art of saying a lot in a little. And the challenge is to say what you want to mean, but without extraneous words cut it down, make it just what you wanted to present. And this is called Still Life. And it is also an acrostic poem. As you can see, this painting is actually mine. It hangs in my living room as it's mentioned in the poem. And much of this is autobiographical, but in poetry you always have a license to change things to fit what you want. So not everything in here is the God's truth, but a lot of it is. And it's called Still Life. Entering that gallery so many years ago, I spotted a gem, the perfect fit for the remaining blank space on one wall in my living room. It's a small piece, really, to dominate such a large room. 2 slender, pale yellow vases, terracotta perhaps, each graced with a modest bouquet of brilliant orange hibiscus blooms, set off within an ornate gold frame which glistens whether bathed by the afternoon sun or more simply in the reflected light of a nearby lamp. When I return to my apartment after dinner, I sometimes amuse myself by spinning a backstory for the painting, a peace offering from a contrite beau who's wounded his sweetheart, a birthday gift from a loving daughter in honor of her hard-working single mother. But always it welcomes me home and reminds me I'm still here. Okay. So we are going to move into our second group of poems. And for this group, I gave our participants a new prompt. And it was to write a poem using one or more of our 5 senses. That is, something they saw, heard, felt, smelled, and or tasted. And again, Jeannie will start us off, and but we're going to end with a special guest presenter.
Thank you again, Martha. I wrote this poem about 6 weeks ago, and I had fun with it. It was written for Martha Young in honor of her gifts of baking and giving to others. She graciously let me interview her again and again and again at length. She and Fran even let me take pictures inside their marvelously fragrant apartment. So this one is for Margaret and her husband, who always has his hands in the dough too. Would you just stand just for a moment, please? Just in case some of our new residents haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet. Thank you. The aroma of anticipation. The elevator door yawns with a groan. Busy, like me, up and down all day. Enticing aromas smack me in the face. Their undulating waves splash up my nose. I breathe them in. My lagging spirit lifts and floats. It's Margaret's baking day. She needs a labor of love. Mix the dough on Tuesday, refrigerate till Wednesday. Let it sit out overnight. Bake it on Thursday. Butter the golden tops while hot. Chill the loaves whole so they slice evenly first thing on Friday. Perhaps she'll surprise us with shortbread or a Scottish scone instead. A tribute to her homeland, which she loves so much to share. Breads, scones, shortbread, I crave them all. My pillow is wet when I wake Friday morns. I've been dreaming again of the 6th floor tradition. Our neighbor, our friends, a knock on the door, a Ziploc bag, and her lilting brogue, I've brought you your bread. Thank you. Barbara will come back up to read more on rock hunting.
This is the poem entitled Prospecting. The prompt for the second poem was that it was to appeal to the reader's visual senses. Years ago, when I was teaching geology to my 7th graders, I couldn't help but notice that students loved the rocks that sparkled and were shiny. They often disappeared from my school collection. One of the favorites was pyrite, or fool's gold. And when our Friends Homes group traveled to the Reed's gold mine, the closest I could come to imagining what a 17-pound gold rock was to imagine what 17 pounds of pyrite would look like. When speaking of gold, we use the term carat again, but this time the carat has a K on it. It's K-A-R-A-T rather than C. This is an entirely different meaning for the word carat. It refers to the purity of the gold. So when you say 24K is pure, that you're referring to something that is made of pure gold. 14K means that the remaining 10 parts of your bracelet or necklace are made of other metals besides gold. This is the poem called Prospecting. Gold fever, not fingers, possessed 12 Friends Homes residents en route to visit the Reed mine that December day. The mine's existence stemmed from the discovery in 1799 of an exquisite 17-pound gold rock found in a nearby stream bed. Sift the sand with our pans, we did so. Sifting and sifting and sifting over again and again. From the remaining residue, with a pair of tweezers, the guide plucked out a glistening flake, placing it in a vial of clear, clean water. 3 gleeful gals held up our treasures proudly, having both a photo and a selfie snapped. The photo later being labeled the Golden Girls. And now I'd like to have Carol Treadway come back up again.
The original prompt for the poem, My Windsor Chair, was to write a poem with a strong beginning and a strong ending. I'll leave it to you whether this fulfills that suggestion. This chair, pictured here, is the late 18th century Philadelphia style Windsor chair. It has been in my family for 5 generations and was originally a deck chair on a ship that sailed between Charleston, Barbados, and Newport, Rhode Island. My Windsor chair. When I sit in my Windsor chair, its black paint chipped and worn, I imagine myself as each of the women who sat in this chair before me for 200 years and more. I am sitting on the deck of a ship sailing between Charleston and Newport, watching gulls fly overhead as we approach the shore. I am piecing together a block for this year's quilt, or knitting socks for the family, and mending holes in the ones I knit last year. I am sitting by the fire enjoying the warmth on a cold winter day, drinking tea with a neighbor, sharing news of family and friends. I am reading the Bible as I do each evening, then sitting in silence as the cares of the day fall away. I am cradling the babe in my arms, watching her eyes droop into sleep. One day, she will sit in this chair to add another story. Martha Goleski.
Well, again, going back to the prompt of a visual idea, which is what I chose, I looked around my apartment and I saw various objects that reminded me of my parents. So I've selected a few for you. You see a picture of the two of them. That was their engagement picture. And if you look very closely at my father's left eye, you will see it droop slightly, just like mine does when I look in the mirror. You also see an elephant, a sculpture that was a favorite of my mother's and that graced our drum table in the living room. And then in the very front is a little red glass cup, which is called a Kiddush cup. And it is used in the Jewish culture to drink wine on the Sabbath and on certain holidays. And this particular one is a miniature one because it was given to my father by one of his favorite aunts a week after he was born, when he was circumscribed. And this is called Ashes to Ashes. His voice echoes in a rumble of thunder, the whisper of a breeze. His face stares back from the bathroom mirror in the droop of an eyelid. The ruby red Kiddush cup on the table by the bed reflects earliest days. Her presence is here too, measured more in possessions. The drum table and brass lamp in the living room. The sculpture of an elephant, his upturned trunk symbolizing good luck. The English bone china, used only on special occasions, with its unique yellow border. In life, I'd have sworn I loved them equally, yet somehow he dominates my thoughts, now in a way she cannot match. The difference between a mild obsession and a fond memory. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And as promised, we're going to end this section with a special presenter. We have a couple who came to our Guilford community again about a year ago, the Smiths, Macon and Marcy Smith. And I didn't recognize Macon at first, and then he reminded me that we had met years ago, that we had been in a poetry critique group over at New Friends meeting that met for many years, and he was one of our best poets. He was known for especially some of his political satires, but also for other work. And I thought it would be a fitting end to have his wife Marcy present one of Macon's poems for us today.
Macon has written a lot of poetry over the years. Okay. Macon has written a lot of poetry over the years, but that particular poetry group was a real gift to one another. They encouraged one another. They asked one another to, move beyond themselves. Judy Behar led that group, and she encouraged them also to send their poems in, and because of that, he had some of his poems published with the North Carolina Poetry Society. This is not one of them, but this is one of my favorites of his. It's called The Persistence of Memory, and if that sounds familiar to you, that's also the name of Dolly's painting that has the clocks melting all over everything. When it's time to lay my body down, don't drink from the bottle of despair. Wail at the moon if you must. Sing soft songs, tell tall tales, bring out your best jokes. Laugh once again as if you have had no sudden ending. Take deep gulps of gratitude and grace. Pound the dry bones of your grief into a celebratory paste. Smear your body with the symbols of hope. When the dreams descend and the night birds cease their calling, there in that moment, between reverie and remembrance, I shall return to claim a final dance. Like two dervishes, we'll twirl in the solar breezes as we hurtle through a universe of no tomorrows.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you, Macon. That concludes our program, and I would like to thank you again for coming today. I'd also like to thank Mary Wallace, who just left the room, for all of her technical assistance, without which we could not put on a program of this type. And I'd like to invite you to join us now at the Foxconn Court for some refreshments, an opportunity to talk to the poets today if you want to, or just kick back and relax and enjoy a beverage and some food. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to make a pitch for our poetry writers group. We would really love to add one or two new members, and I know we have a lot of new people who've moved in since this group has been here long before I was. But we'd love to have you join us, even if you think you could not write or never have written, but you have the desire. It's worth coming to observe. You'll see what we do. And as Jeannie so lovely presented early on, she really captured the essence of our group. We are friendly, we are helpful, we support each other, we become friends, we learn about each other in deep ways that perhaps you've never shared with any other person. It's a beautiful experience, and we meet on the first Friday of every month at 11 o'clock. And if you're interested, come to observe, come talk to me about it, and I hope we will be able to, as I say, add one or two members. Again, thank you, and let's go to the concourse and have some food. Thank you so much.
Judy, you're fine.